We all love a good comeback story, right? You know those moments when someone stares down defeat and comes out swinging?
Absolutely. Those underdog moments are always inspiring.
But what separates a temporary win from, like, a complete transformation?
Yeah, what is that secret sauce?
Today's deep dive, we're going into the world of elite athletes to figure out how they not just overcome adversity, but actually use it as fuel.
I like that. Use it as fuel.
And we're pulling these insights from Challenger Deep, Athletes Rising Above Adversity, a playbook of real-life stories from sports legends by Jeff Heggie and Tami Matheny.
What I love about Challenger Deep is it's not just some theoretical, self-help book. It's about the mental game that happens behind the scenes with these incredible athletes.
Right, like we see the medals, the trophies, all that, but what goes on in their heads to get there?
Exactly.
And a great example of that is Michael Jordan. So he's already a phenomenal player, tells Coach Dean Smith, I want to be the best.
You'd think Smith would be like, yeah, right, let's go.
Right, that's what you'd expect. But instead of a pat on the back, Jordan gets a reality check. Smith essentially told him, show me what hard work really looks like.
It's that moment we've all experienced. You think you're giving it your all, 100%, and then someone opens your eyes to this whole other level.
Well, you didn't even know existed.
And what's key here is that Smith redirected Jordan to compete, not just against his teammates, but against himself.
So instead of just trying to be better than the next guy, Jordan's challenge became, how can I be better than I was yesterday?
Now that is a game changer, and that's a concept anyone listening can apply no matter what your field.
Right, it's not about being the best, it's about being your best.
Exactly. And Challenger Deep talks about this idea of a 5-to-1 ratio for growth. So 5 positive reinforcements for every 1 criticism.
Okay, so for every time you're like, man, I messed that up, you need 5, hey, you're crushing it moments.
It's about rewiring your brain to focus on progress, not just perfection.
Okay, so it's like those small victories really matter.
Absolutely.
Speaking of pushing through challenges, let's talk about Desi Linden at the 2018 Boston Marathon.
Oh, yeah.
Picture this. Pouring rain, freezing temps, everyone is miserable, and Linden is ready to call it quits.
That was a notoriously brutal race. I mean, even seasoned marathon runners were struggling.
Oh, absolutely. But here's where Linden's story takes an unexpected turn. Instead of focusing on her own misery, she decides to help a struggling competitor, Shalane Flanagan.
Wow.
And in the middle of a marathon, every ounce of energy counts, right?
Oh, yeah.
You'd think helping someone else would totally take her out of the running.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive.
But here's the thing, Linden's act of generosity, it's like it unlocked this hidden reserve of energy, like this surge of determination. And guess what? She ends up winning the entire race.
No way. See, that's incredible. It sounds like a movie, but there's actually real science behind this.
Really?
Yeah, so helping others releases dopamine and oxytocin, those feel-good brain chemicals.
Okay, I've heard of those.
Right, and at the same time, it actually reduces those stress hormones, like cortisol.
So it's like a natural performance enhancer.
Exactly. It's like she hacked the system.
So by shifting her focus outward, she unlocked a new level of performance.
Precisely.
It's like we always hear it takes a village, but we don't really believe it.
Right. We think we can do it on our own.
But sometimes lending a hand is the very thing that helps us reach our full potential.
100%. And speaking of defining expectations, get ready to have your perception of failure completely flipped on its head. What comes to mind when you think of Babe Ruth?
Home runs. He's like the baseball legend.
Exactly. But what if I told you that for a decade, Babe Ruth also held the record for the most strikeouts?
Wait, seriously? The Sultan of SWAT? Striking out left and right.
Yeah, he was. But here's the thing, Ruth. He didn't view those strikeouts as failures. He saw them as just part of the process.
Okay, so how do we get inside that headspace? Because most of us, we see a strikeout or, a missed deadline, a rejected proposal, whatever it is, and we want to, like, crawl under a rock.
It's human nature, right, to want to avoid that feeling of failure. But what if, instead of fearing those setbacks, we embraced them? Ruth understood that a 1 in 3 success rate in baseball was enough to make you a legend. Imagine if we applied that to, our own lives.
Okay, so you're saying instead of beating ourselves up, we need to be more like Babe Ruth and just be like, all right, on to the next one.
Exactly. It's about shifting that perspective. Those failures, they're really just data points, stepping stones to something bigger.
Okay, I like that, stepping stones. Speaking of pushing boundaries, Aaron Manson's story, it's a testament to what happens when you combine these audacious goals with unstoppable action. You might not be into field hockey, but trust me, her story's a home run.
It really is remarkable.
Yeah.
Matson, she won national championships as both a player and a coach.
So she's like a prodigy or something.
Well, and not just any coaching gig. She took over the legendary UNC field hockey program at 23 years old.
23. Are you kidding me? Most people at that age are like, should I get a dog? Not. I'm going to coach a championship team.
Right. But that's the thing. Matheny saw an opportunity and she went for it. She didn't let age or experience hold her back.
It's like that saying, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly. And Matheny's story, it begs the question, what's that one thing you're holding back on? That burning goal?
Yeah, what would happen if you just silenced those doubts and went for it? Okay, let's talk about teamwork. This next story takes us inside the locker room of the Richmond Football Club, a championship team that used a surprisingly simple exercise to build this unshakable trust.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this. It's called the Triple H, right?
Yeah, the Triple H. So each player, every staff member, they share their hero, a hardship they've overcome, and a highlight, something they're proud of.
And it seems so simple, but the impact is profound. People get emotional, they cry, they really open up to each other.
It's about more than just, stats and plays, right? It's about building these human connections that make a team stronger.
Precisely. It creates this foundation of trust, which is essential for any team that wants to perform at their best. Allows for honest feedback, for pushing each other, for thriving under pressure.
It makes you wonder why every team isn't doing this. Okay, you ready for a little perspective shift on what it means to lose? We're going back to basketball, this time with Giannis Antetokounmpo. So the Milwaukee Bucks, favored to win it all, they get knocked out early in the playoffs.
Tough break.
Yeah. And of course, in the post-game interview, someone hits Giannis with the dreaded failure question.
I can practically feel the tension in those moments.
Oh yeah, those post-game interviews can be brutal. But Giannis, he doesn't even flinch. He completely reframed the situation, compared it to Michael Jordan's career. He pointed out even MJ didn't win a championship every season. It's about the journey, the steps along the way, the constant pursuit of, being better.
He's so right. It's so easy to get caught up in that end goal, to label everything as either a success or a failure.
Right, black and white, no in between.
But Giannis reminds us that it's all part of a process. There are always going to be opportunities to learn, to adapt, to come back even stronger.
Speaking of coming back stronger, Laura Wilkinson's story, it's like a masterclass in the power of the mind. So imagine this. You're an Olympic diver, months away from the biggest competition of your life, and you break your foot.
Oh my gosh, devastating.
Right. You'd think her Olympic dreams are over. Most athletes would be, completely sidelined.
Yeah, that's a career-ending injury for a lot of people.
But Wilkinson, she finds a way to train. Even when she couldn't physically get in the pool,
Right.
she visualized.
Wow.
Like she would lie there for hours, meticulously running through every dive in her mind, over and over again.
And, visualization, it's not just some woo-woo, self-help thing. Neuroscience has actually shown that when we vividly imagine ourselves performing an action, it activates similar brain regions as if we were actually doing it.
It's like giving your brain a little sneak peek of the main
It's
event.
exactly mental rehearsal for the real deal.
So even if you're not training for the Olympics, you can use this to prep for like a big presentation.
Absolutely. Or a difficult conversation, anything that makes you nervous.
Yeah, just visualize that successful outcome and you're good to go.
It's about priming your brain for peak performance.
Okay, I like that. Priming your brain. Speaking of mental toughness, Michael Phelps. You've seen the highlight reels, right? 28 Olympic medals.
The G8.
But what you don't see are those moments when things went wrong. Like the time his goggles filled up with water in the middle of an Olympic race.
Oh, no. Can you imagine the pressure, the roar of the crowd, and suddenly you're swimming blind?
Most people would have, completely panicked, right?
100%.
But not Phelps. He stays laser focused, relies on his training, his muscle memory, and still manages to win gold.
Now, that is years of mental preparation kicking in. And, his coach, Bob Bowman, he would intentionally create chaos during practice.
Oh, really? Like what?
Equipment malfunctions, distractions, you name it, all to build that unshakable mental fortitude.
So it's like he was training for those pressure moments without even realizing it.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not about avoiding the tough stuff. It's about being ready for it when it happens.
Being prepared, both physically and mentally.
And while we're on the topic of facing adversity with, grace, we can't forget Venus and Serena Williams.
Oh, absolutely not. Legends.
Their careers are legendary, right? But what's often overlooked are the battles they've both fought off the court.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize all the challenges they've overcome.
Chronic illnesses, personal loss, the constant pressure of being pioneers in their sport, and they faced it all with this incredible strength and dignity.
What strikes me about their story is, you rarely hear them complaining, making excuses.
Right, they just keep going.
They let their performance speak for itself.
It's like they channeled all of that energy, that adversity into their game.
Maybe that's part of what makes them so unstoppable.
It makes you wonder, like, what does resilience really look like in your world?
Right. What are you facing head on even when no one else sees the struggle?
Because we all have those challenger deep moments, those times when you're pushed to your absolute limit.
The question is, how will you respond?
Will you let those challenges define you, or will you use them as fuel to become even stronger?
Yeah.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. What's one strategy you can borrow from these incredible athletes to help you navigate your own challenges?
Whether it's reframing failure, like Babe Ruth, visualizing success like Laura Wilkinson, or building that support system like the Richmond Football Club, remember, there are countless ways to turn those setbacks into stepping stones.
Because ultimately, it's not about avoiding the storm, right? It's about learning to sail through it and coming out stronger on the other side.
Love that.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.